in Richmond, 96 double. Hot, hot.
99.7 KRED.
Tell you, man, you leading the league in hydration.
Aurora.
I've eaten burritos bigger than you.
This is Running Wild with Brandon Jackson.
What's going on, everybody? This is Brandon Jackson here, 99.7 KRED and Aurora. We're back home. Finally, it's been 2 long bye weeks, but we finally get our first home game since we played Colorado State. I believe that was back in week 4 or week 3, one of those two. Kind of crazy that it's been that long since we played at home, but we get our first Sun Belt Conference home game going up against Texas State. A lot of prospects in this week to visit. Paul Phillips, the halfback from Pueblo, Al Weddle, fullback, wide receiver DJ Smith from Durango, Cade Montgomery, the wide receiver from Sunrise, Darian Bowles, the wide receiver from Greeley and one of the top prospects here in Colorado, Chuck Oferije from Littleton, Michael Ecker, the guard, Lee Hines, the kicker, and corner Brian Stevens. And more importantly, 2 weeks ago, we picked up win number 2 on the season. A very great game offensively altogether by Aurora. Very sound, very, what's the word I'm thinking of? Methodical. That's what it is. Methodical. They put together 4 coherent drives that got them 28 points. It was 28-7 going into the 4th. It was a pretty decisive game. And then, the defense playing a little prevent. Ended up giving 2 touchdowns. They recovered an onside kick as well. But in the end, Aurora prevailed over Troy and picked up the win 28-21. I thought overall a pretty good game from Chandler Gaines. I thought the defense did, or not just did, they were outstanding throughout the entire game. You had that interception in the 4th quarter that really kind of cemented things. And I mean, look, we went into the 4th quarter with 7 points only given up on defense. More than anything, I think that this has helped kind of provide some security for not only Mashburn, but for the defensive coordinator, Spencer Bruce, and offensive coordinator, Colby Kierkegaard. I don't think they're going anywhere next year. I think they're going to be pretty good overall. But I'm going to quickly go over some high school stuff because we have way more important news than just the standings and the score. So I'll quickly go over the standings thus far after this week. Aspen still on top at 7-0 in the standings. Durango 6-1 after they defeated Littleton in a clash of the one-loss teams. Durango came out on top. They're now 6-1. Littleton is now 5-2. St. Joe's 4-3, and then it's the battle for 3 and 4 all the way down. Sunrise, Colorado Springs, Greeley, Aurora at 3 and 4, and then at 2 and 5 at the bottom of the barrel, Denver, Moore, Pueblo, and Boulder. As that rounds out the high school competition down here in Colorado, and it looks like we may be on our way towards an Aspen and Durango high school championship game here in Colorado. Aspen's still the favorite as they're undefeated and their defense has been on top. Mike Hayes has been pretty lights out thus far in those past 2 weeks. He's kind of gotten it together. Had a big game against Littleton where he threw for 390 yards. So, going to be interesting to see what goes on later on with Durango, him and DJ Smith and Noah Baldwin down there. But the bigger news that we need to get into, since I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the high school class, is that we had Clemson versus Florida State and didn't talk about it at all. Number 1 versus number 2. Clemson came in number 1 and Florida State number 2. Clemson gave up 31 points in this contest, ended up losing as now Florida State went on to defeat them and take over the number 1 spot in the nation in a 31-27 contest. But that's actually not the big news I wanted to talk about. Kind of a little swerve there, like what I did there. The big news is that Aurora has their first 2 recruits of the year. First off, a defensive end from Denver High, Dylan Sherville, the first recruit, the defensive end coming in to Red Foxes football. So glad to have him on board. Going to be interesting to see because I think the defensive line right now is kind of okay with Andre Swift and Rangi Unatoa. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he gets redshirted the first year. He comes on board maybe freshman, sophomore year to finally start making some plays. But glad to finally have him on board. Denver and that number 8 jersey will be the first jersey to actually be hung up around the stadium. So glad to see that and have that there. And the second is a big one, really, really big one. I mentioned him a little earlier in the program. Quarterback from Durango High, Mike Hayes, officially on board. He will still visit this week with the rest of the prospects to see the game against Texas State here in Aurora, but he officially signed, so hopefully that's all of the influence that we need to get DJ Smith over here as well. I mean, Mike Hayes has the potential to possibly start next year. I think that the QB race may be still be a little bit wide open. I don't think it's open this year. I think it's kind of firmly in Chandler Gaines' hands, but I have a feeling that if Hayes comes in here right away and starts to impress, he could be starting as soon as next year. We'll see. Let's not jump to conclusions yet. I don't want to start any controversy or anything like that, but something to keep in mind. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into your questions. We'll go over them and see what you guys have thought after the win. Let's see here. We got Third Degree Top Gun. Hey, Brandon, first off, how are you today? Well, doing all right. I'm doing fine. Always good to have a win before you, when you go on air and then prepare for the next week. Glad to be at home. I don't have to travel. I mean, granted, I like travel, but anyway. Second, who are some of the Impact Juniors Mashburn will try and recruit next season? Have a nice day over there at KRED. Hashtag RunWild. Yes, RunWild. I don't know. I actually haven't talked to him about juniors next year, but I imagine that if he's looking at anybody, I'd imagine I would start with Zion Meadows, actually. The corner over there at Aspen. I would actually just go get Zion Meadows, go full in on the Jones Carter brothers, Rogue and Jordan, and get them in there ASAP. I mean, that's a defensive end, a offensive lineman, and there have been some troubles with the offensive line this year. Gaines has had to get rid of passes really, really quickly, but they've made it work thus far. And then Zion Meadows, I think that they need another corner there with Divine to really help him out because I don't think that Paul Benevienti gets the job done. He's a very good tackler, very solid when it comes to, you got to get a guy down. He's there. But in terms of awareness and, making plays on the ball, I don't think he's necessarily the answer. So I think that those are 3 guys that I think he should focus on. With Mike Hayes coming on board, I don't think Johan Mondrasso is an option next year. I haven't talked to Mashburn about that yet, but I mean, we'll see what happens. But I think Mondrasso's a really talented kid. You have to take a shot at him, but I think Mashburn might actually overlook him now that Hayes has come in. All right, let's look. Second question here. Let's go to. All right, let's give Dylan Bowers a try here. Do you think that Gaines has proven to be the best quarterback for Mashburn's office? Hashtag RunWild from the 216 Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, RunWild. Yeah, I don't think it's a question at this point. I just think that in terms of being able to change the play at the line of scrimmage, to move from formation to formation, and putting together the most coherent drives. I mean, last week, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You had the one trick play where Winslet threw a touchdown. I just think that Gaines is the guy and who you go with. He's proven it. He's gone into practice every single week as he's gone into practice this week and just proven that he should be the guy running the offense. As much as I love D'Souza and his efforts, I like Hendricks as a thrower at times, even though he can get a little too trigger happy. I just think that the right move to make is to keep Gaines in there. He's the all-around package. a little bit taller than most of those guys. I mean, he's standing at 6'3", 215. Yeah, I just you got to go Gaines. I think Gaines is absolutely the answer right now. Let's see, next question here. Scrolling through. Let's take this one from C. Jizzle Smith. Mashburn's offense in Wyoming was effective with the usage of the tight ends. When do you think Mashburn will implement more plays for the tight ends? That's actually a really good question because, a big part of Mashburn's offense when he was with Wyoming was getting a fullback involved and using both tight ends in order to really create mismatches for the defense. He has shied away from fullbacks a little bit. Not necessarily that he hasn't completely not used them, but you haven't seen a lot of Mac Truck McGee and hearing his name called a lot. But instead what he's done is that he's implemented a 3-back system, going into that full house formation and using Rojas, Winslet, and Timberlake, the backfield boys, keeping them together and using them as a 3-headed monster. Now, I think that he's gone away from the uses of tight ends because he doesn't necessarily have the tight ends that he wants for the system to work. I mean, I think Jimmy Ireland is a really good receiving tight end, but not a big guy that you can put on the line quite yet and have him block. And I don't think he's that big of a passing threat that maybe somebody like Chuck Oferije could be. So he uses Ireland in 5 wide sets and has the mismatch there as a slot receiver, and then puts Blanchard in there to block because he needs as much protection as possible to keep his quarterback safe. So I think in time we may see him go to a 2 tight end system. I just don't think it's going to happen yet with who he currently has on board. And we'll take one more question here. Let's take a look. All right, let's go to Omer Frank. Why do you think the offense repeatedly attempted plays that never work, like screens? Why not balance the offense more? Hashtag RunWilD from Meltar Israel. Wow, we have fans all the way out in Israel. That's awesome. Thanks, Omer. Appreciate the question. That's a tough question because I don't know if it's so much repeating the same plays over and over again because he doesn't want to balance the offense, but more so, what are the plays that he can run that will cause the fewer amount of turnovers? You look back at Wyoming, look at Wyoming at the beginning of the season and the plays that they ran. And then look at how expanded that offense became when he started adding in a little bit more option. He wasn't afraid to run deep patterns because there was a trust within the system, and that offense became explosive. I mean, how many points did they put up in that game against Arizona? What was it, like a 67-65 ordeal? It was insane. So I think that right now he's working with the pieces that he has. And he knows that he has to resort to short plays, keeping the ball on the ground, running a lot of option in order to try to trip up the defense, rather than running plays that he'd like that can stretch out the defense because he doesn't have the speed to do so right now. Maybe next year when we see the talent that we get on board, that might change. But I think right now he has to resort to attempting plays more like that where it seems like you're seeing the same play over and over and over again. Like the screens, like he constantly goes to screen passes to Timberlake in order to kind of like let him get some open space, which is, I think, the strategy behind it is, you get him in open space. If you can't run with them, you might as well, throw a screen so that he has 3 blockers in front of him and he can, just try to kind of weave his way around. I think you're going to see more of that this week as well. So yeah, do be prepared. If you're tired of seeing screenplays, it's not going away anytime soon. I think he's going to stick to it as much as he can. That'll do it for the questions this week. Looking forward to the matchup against Texas State. It's going to be interesting because I think they have similar defenses in terms of their production this year. And offensively, I think you're going to see some similarities as well in terms of running screenplays and trying to get their running backs in open space. Should be a fun one. You're listening to 99.7 KRED. We'll talk a little bit more about it after this.